seems like every time there's progress made in these nearly weekly talks, it seems that Vladimir Zelensky does something, the US does something that undermines the capacity and ability for peace. So we shall see. But nonetheless, Ukraine has just become a far more repressive place, a very unsafe place for anyone on the political left. And it is a really dangerous and unprecedented move to consolidate political power like this, even in so-called war times, especially given the fact that this war could be ended in a much more simple manner. How? Well, Ukraine could just reject NATO membership and could also demilitarize and recognize the Eastern republics as independent states, and all of this would stop. Right. And it could follow the Minsk Accords, enact a ceasefire in East Ukraine, pull back its troops and its so-called paramilitaries and these fascist forces, and allow Eastern Ukraine to develop and have its self-determination, something that, while controversial to some, actually is really the only possible solution here, given that it is not Ukraine, right? It's not the Ukraine government that is opposing the splitting of the country, right? Ukraine's military assault on Donetsk, Lugansk, on Donbass is literally a strategy to split the country. So the only solution then, if the people of Donbass want not to be a part of Ukraine anymore, if they want independence, and Ukraine is literally engaging in a civil war, which effectively splits the country, then the only solution is independence for these republics, a ceasefire, a peaceful resolution, one that has at its core the promise that Ukraine won't join NATO and that it will stop and begin to eliminate all of its weapons systems and all of the lethal, quote-unquote, military aid that it has received from the United States and NATO. And honestly, this is going to be a policy that I think Russia demands from countries all across its former Soviet republics and along its border as the US and NATO become more and more aggressive in their policy. So this is really just Act One of a larger problem that is going to see more and more conflict play out, more and more conflict develop, and we really do have the United States and its NATO alliance to blame. That's why we say abolish NATO, abolish NATO, abolish NATO. It's important to understand that context, understand that Ukraine has had these laws on the books for a while. The Communist Party has long been banned. And now this has extended to all left-wing groups who are considered even remotely, quote-unquote, pro-Russian, or honestly just critical of the current government. And so this is dangerous. Yeah, this is dangerous. So all those free speech folks, all those who seem to care about elections and political integrity and quote-unquote democracy, it's so striking to see how most people, especially in the establishment, particularly in the establishment, have not mentioned this at all. And yet they continue to promote this idea that Zelensky is a hero, even as he puts into place policies that they claim, let's say, Donald Trump was doing, or let's say Putin is doing, right? These are the things that they accuse those they don't like of doing. Yet when it comes to their allies and friends, are perfectly okay with it, right? It's just like Saudi Arabia beheading 81 people in a day. Oh, it doesn't really deserve much attention, right? The U.S. doesn't give them even a slap on the wrist. It just ignores it, moves on from it, and says, okay, we'll continue to do business. And that's exactly what's happening here. Ukraine is useful. Ukraine's a vassal state. Ukraine is a launching pad for this NATO drive to contain Russia. And so Ukraine can honestly do anything. It can do anything, right? I can beg for a no-fly zone even when the United States and NATO says, oh, hold on, we're not going to do that for you. But he can do it. Zelensky can do it, and Ukraine's government can beg for it, and all these far-right forces, so-called protesting in the streets, can beg for a no-fly zone despite its ramifications without any criticism from the United States or NATO countries, because Ukraine is useful, just like Israel is useful. Israel can genocide Palestinians, colonize Palestinians, but Israel is useful. It's a beachhead in the Middle East. It's a highly militarized settler colonial state, which does have, honestly, a similar agenda to the U.S. in maintaining strategic imperialist dominance in the Arab and Muslim world out there, right? Out in that part of the world, Central Asia, Eurasia. So Israel is very important, right? And so Israel can do whatever it wants. And the United States will barely bat an eye. Actually, the United States will give about $3.8 billion per year to the IDF and to the Israeli Defense Forces to continue on its slaughter of Palestinians. Saudi Arabia the same way. Billions upon billions of dollars of military weaponry, all going to the slaughter of the people of Yemen and the starvation of the people of Yemen and Saudi Arabia's dirty war on Yemen. One that is honestly not going to end because the people of Yemen fiercely resist, but There is no pressure outside of Yemen and outside, of course, the non-aligned countries. There is no pressure to stop it from those who are provoking the war, which, of course, is the United States and its allies, arming Saudi Arabia to the teeth, right? So there's all these flashpoints, and they all point to very convenient allies for the United States. And now Ukraine is being exposed as one of these. And now it is not just merely a coup government. It is one that is engaging in fascist policies and strategies to forward its agenda. And that, I must say, is incredibly dangerous. And it's something we must oppose. And it's something we must speak out against, no matter how hard it is, right? Because it is difficult right now. The anti-Russia sentiment is at fever pitch in the United States and in the Western world. Most people view Russia as their enemy. And as I wrote on Substack, just that is not the case here, right? We need to continue to forward a clear understanding and analysis of the situation. And that means condemning Zelensky